Hey everyone, and welcome. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide for today's explainer. We're going to explore the fascinating, booming region of East Asia together. It's a part of the world that's growing incredibly fast, with towering cities and amazing new technologies. But, as we're about to see, growing that fast, well, it brings some really big tests. Okay, let's dive right in.
Imagine riding your bike to school through thick, heavy smog. It's kind of hard to see, and it might even be hard to take a deep breath. Facing that in a place like Beijing, China, perfectly illustrates our main theme for today. Rapid economic growth brings incredible wealth, sure, but it also brings big, everyday challenges for the people who actually live there.
So, here is our map for today's explainer. First, economic hurdles. Second, political puzzles. Third, environmental tests. And finally, let's review our journey.
Starting off with our very first pillar, economic hurdles.
Okay, so a lot of countries in East Asia, like China, have grown rich by relying really heavily on exporting goods. What does that mean exactly? Well, think of it like baking a massive batch of the most delicious chocolate chip cookies, but instead of letting your own family eat them, you literally only sell them to your neighbors down the street. East Asian countries make lots of goods, but they sell most of them to people in the US and Europe instead of to their own citizens. And this makes them a bit vulnerable. If those neighbors suddenly don't have money to buy cookies, the baker is in big trouble.
And massive shipping containers stacked high in busy ports, like Qingdao Harbor, show this in action. Every single day, countless ships packed with products leave the region. Now, because the workers making these goods often receive lower pay, they have less money to spend as shoppers at home. So the country's economy really relies on these ships constantly sailing away to other places. That brings us to our very first academic keyword for today, demography. I definitely want you to remember this word. Demography simply means population trends. Basically, it's the study of how a population changes over time, like looking at the number of new babies being born compared to the number of older people who are retiring. To understand why demography is a challenge, let's look at Japan. Imagine a playground seesaw. On one side, you have a shrinking workforce because fewer babies are being born. On the other side, you've got a growing elderly population because people are living a lot longer and retiring. The seesaw is totally unbalanced. In Japan, a much smaller group of young workers has to support a much larger group of retired grandparents.
And that imbalance leads us to our next key word, strain. A strain is a pressure or stress on something. Japan's falling number of workers puts a very heavy strain on their economic growth. Think of it like wearing a backpack on a long hike, right? And someone just keeps adding heavy rocks to it. As the number of workers drops, it just gets harder and harder for the country's economy to keep moving forward.
So, we've looked at money, but what happens when countries share a region but completely disagree about land, safety, and rules? Take a second to think about that.
Which brings us right to our second pillar, political puzzles.
Now, a major safety concern for the region is North Korea's push to develop dangerous nuclear weapons and missiles. This is a very serious issue, and world leaders have tried many times to persuade North Korea to stop developing these weapons, simply because they threaten peace in the area.
Another political puzzle involves our third keyword, dispute. A dispute is just a disagreement or a debate. In East Asia, there are actually many disputes over territory. For example, several countries claim the exact same islands in the South China Sea. It's very much like two students in a classroom arguing over who gets to sit in the single best chair by the window. These conflicting land claims are a major source of tension.
There are also different ways governments rule their people in this region. Our sources note that both China and North Korea have authoritarian governments that limit people's political freedom. For instance, they restrict access to information, like the internet. North Korea's government is noted as being particularly harsh, imprisoning many people in grim detention camps. We also see tensions in Hong Kong. It was promised democracy when China took possession of it in 1997, but real democracy there has been blocked.
Okay, let's take a quick breath. We've talked about the hurdles of money and the puzzles of politics, but what tests does Mother Nature bring to this rapidly growing region?
Welcome to our third pillar, environmental tests.
Let's start with our fourth keyword, reservoir. A reservoir is a storage pool of water. You can think of it as a giant, human-made bathtub, used to catch and hold water from a river so that people can use it for energy or for drinking.
The Three Gorges Dam in China, built on the Chang River, is a massive real-world example of this. It actually creates a 400-mile-long reservoir. Now, this dam is really helpful because it produces necessary electricity and controls dangerous flooding. But creating this giant bathtub meant that the water flooded historic sites and forced more than 1 million people to move away from their homes. So it's a really tough balance between needing energy and protecting people's homes.
East Asia also faces huge natural tests right beneath its soil. Have you ever heard of plate tectonics? Basically, the Earth's crust is made of giant puzzle pieces that slowly bump into each other. Japan, the Koreas, and Taiwan sit right where 4 of these massive tectonic plates meet. And when these giant Earth puzzle pieces bump together, they cause intense pressure, which leads to earthquakes and volcanoes.
And that brings us to our final keyword today, tsunami. When those tectonic plates bump and cause an earthquake under the sea, it creates huge tidal waves called tsunamis that can powerfully flood coastal areas.
Tsunamis are a deeply sad reality for the region. Back in 2011, a powerful earthquake created a massive tsunami that surged onshore in northern Japan. It tragically caused major devastation, killing thousands of people. And to make matters even worse, the disaster damaged a nuclear power plant in Fukushima, causing a dangerous radioactive accident. It really showed the world just how risky relying on nuclear power can be in earthquake zones.
Finally, let's talk about pollution. Fast economic growth has created severe pollution problems. China has some of the world's worst air pollution from coal-burning factories and vehicles, making it the largest producer of greenhouse gases on Earth. In Beijing, the land around the city is actually so dry that sandstorms blow right into the streets. Plus, farm fertilizers and sewage have heavily polluted water supplies, like the Chang River, that millions of people depend on every single day.
You have done an amazing job keeping up with all these complex topics. Let's quickly review our journey. Let's check off our 3 main pillars one last time. First, economic hurdles. We learned about the risks of relying too much on exports and the heavy strain of changing demography. Second, political puzzles. We saw how territorial disputes and limits on freedom cause tension. And third, environmental tests. We witnessed the trade-offs of massive reservoirs, the dangers of tsunamis, and severe pollution.
So I want to leave you with this big thought. If you are a leader in East Asia right now, how would you balance making your country rich with keeping your people and your environment totally safe? It's definitely not an easy puzzle to solve. Keep exploring these big ideas on your own. Keep asking great questions, and I'll catch you on our next explainer.